Hello everyone, welcome back to Study Room. So today we'll be continuing with our chapter conservation of biodiversity, natural resources, and in this case we'll be continuing conservation of forest and wildlife. So what is biosphere? So just like the name suggests, bio means life. Bio means life everywhere. Sphere means a living planet or living area. So, biosphere is that part of the earth in which living organisms exist or which supports life. The biosphere, also known as ecosphere, is a worldwide sum of all ecosystems. So, there are three names for biosphere, ecosphere, and zone of life. And what is biosphere? A part of earth in which living organism exist and supports life. For example, this earth is a biosphere and there live several population, senses, organisms, biome, ecosystem. We will be discussing about all these five things in the upcoming lectures or slides. So this is biosphere. Biosphere is any part of earth where living organism exists or survives and support lives. What is biodiversity? So bio, since bio means life, diversity means many varieties or diverse things. So biological diversity, or in the short term biodiversity, refers to the variety of organisms which exist on the earth, their relationship or interrelationship with the environment. So how different varieties of organism interact with one another and interact with our earth. So this is what biodiversity is. How forest and wildlife can be saved. So how can we save? We can build natural parks, wildlife resources, biological reserves. So we can make these three things. And some other examples are preserving areas of biological importance, make them a part of national heritage, just like our government has done. For there are special biosphere reserves or national park for special category of animals. For example, Kaziranga is famous for rhinoceros. So they have linked the importance of saving our wildlife with the national heritage. Apart from our personal efforts and efforts of the society, government agency also take care of the forest and animals. The government lays down several methods, there are several acts, there are several policies to design. For example, for wildlife, there is Wildlife Protection Act, Life Protection Act, Forest Acts. So there are several laws and policies which protects them or conserves them. By building wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, biosphere reserves, we can save these special category of forest and wildlife by building special area for them. How, this is a question for you, how can we contribute to save our wildlife and forest? We can best practice 3 hours, we can adopt a sustainable lifestyle, we can do carpooling. We must avoid car, but we can do carpooling if in case of a very urgent situation. We should not use car, less wastage. So these are some examples how you can contribute to save your our wildlife and forest. So, what are protected areas? To protect our flora. Flora means plants and fauna means animals. So, you can, remember them with the help of L and A. A animals, plants, L comes in plants. So, to protect flora and fauna and their habitats, protected areas, for example, wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, biosphere reserves have been embarked. So plantation, cultivation, grazing, felling of trees, or selling any products from these particular arenas are strictly prohibited. So if anybody tries to go above law, they'll be strictly punished. So this is about protected areas. So we'll go through them one by one. Wildlife sanctuary. So area where animals are protected from any disturbance to them and their habitat. So here animals are protected. Total number of wildlife sanctuaries are 553. Some wildlife sanctuaries, example Indian Wild Ass Sanctuary, Gujarat, Bhadra Wildlife Sanctuary, Karnataka, Tadoba and Andhari Tiger Reserves, Maharashtra. So you can see it's for tigers, for wild ass. So There are these are special protected areas where wildlife are preserved and saved from the disturbances. What activities are included in wildlife sanctuaries? So, wildlife sanctuaries like reserves, forests provide protection and stable living condition to wild animals. People living in wildlife sanctuaries are allowed to do certain activities such as grazing by their livestock, collecting medicinal plants. So there are certain liberty in wildlife sanctuaries for the people living there. For example, for tribal community, they can graze their livestock, they can collect plants and fireballs. So that this is not very strict laws which are earmarked here, earmarked here, but they can practice certain liberties here without harming the animals. National parks, areas reserved for wildlife where they can freely use the habitats and natural resources. So it's an area which is typically given to wildlife. So they can roam freely in this area. There are 104 national parks, for example, Ranthambore National Park, Panna National Park, Manas National Park in Assam. So these are some national parks. So they can roam freely here and use natural resources. A fun fact: Satpura National Park is the first reserve forest of India. Finest Indian teak is found in this forest. Rock shelter are also found inside the Satpura National Park. These are evidences of prehistoric life. So you can see there are some pictures from our ancient civilization. So this was the first reserve forest of India, Satpura National Park. Figures of animals and man fighting, hunting have been shown here in the rock painting. So this is the oldest or first reserve forest of India. Now, Biosphere Reserves, a large area of protective land for conservation of wildlife, plant and animal reserves, and traditional life of the tribal live in the area. So you can see here, tribal peoples also live along with wildlife. There are 18 Biosphere Reserve, Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve, Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve, Uttarakhand, Sundarbans Biosphere Reserve, which is in Bengal, and this is famous for mangrove trees. Okay, so these are three things: wildlife, a sanctuary, national park, biosphere reserve. So in wildlife sanctuary, there are certain liberties given to people for collecting medicinal leaves and feed their livestock. Biosphere reserve, it's an interconnection between tribal livings there, and it's a community management system. How biosphere reserves maintain the biodiversity and culture of that area. Biosphere reserves are the areas meant for conservation of biodiversity. We can see biosphere, biodiversity means everything is reserved for biodiversity. The biosphere reserves help to maintain the biodiversity and culture of the area. Because there are tribal people living there, they have to protect their culture. A biosphere reserve may also contain other protected areas. The Panchmarhai Biosphere Reserve consists of one national park named Satpura and two wildlife sanctuary named Bori and Panchmari. So biosphere reserves can also, these can exist interlinkly, and for example, there is Panchmahari Biosphere Reserve. It has one national park and two wildlife sanctuary. So you can see in total there are four things there. So this is an activity. List the factors contributing the biodiversity of your area. So you have to see or observe around your surrounding and see what exactly do you see and belong under the sky of ecosystem biodiversity. You can observe cow, you can observe dogs, plants, flowers, anything, even sky. So these some of these factors and human activities may deserve the biodiversity unknowingly. So if after observing the things in your area, you have to see what factors are causing them to extinct. So for example, you see people dumping waste, or you will see people using car more often. You will see people honking their horns, which can lead to noise pollution. There is even light pollution um, can light pollution can affect the feeding habitat or breeding practices of certain nocturnal animals means they roam in the nights. So you have to observe the activity which you feel are environmental concerning. How do the protected forests are not safe? It is a pity that even protected forests are not safe. There are many illegal activities which destroy the wildlife or biodiversity which in there. So people practice illegal hunting or encroaches them, illegal trading. So these are even not safe. So this was the end of our video. In the next video, as you can see, we'll be talking about flora and fauna. So thank you.